just feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college rule!
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. Dom and Chris here. Before we begin, as always, letting you know we're recording down here at Engle Studio here in Tucson for all of your audio needs here in town. And also, please give our social medias a follow, as well as like and subscribe our podcast over there on Spotify and YouTube. Pumping those numbers up would really help us and create the quality content that you've come to enjoy.
That's right. Throw some comments in there. Good, bad, middle. It doesn't even have to be about the episode. You know?
It can be anything.
Literally just throw some comments. I want the Crunchwrap Supreme back. It's still there. I don't know.
Please bring back Crystal Pepsi. We'd like that.
See, that's actually a legitimate comment.
And then both of us would like it, and then hopefully you'd subscribe, and we would get on the ball to bringing it back.
And then we get sponsored by Zima. This is where we're headed. Come on.
Yeah, Zima. Please take us.
We are a Zima podcast. I don't know if you know
Pro
this.
Zima.
I don't think I don't know if I've ever actually had one, but I know I'm pro Zima.
I feel like I almost got diabetes from drinking too much Zima once.
That's an American fucking story. I got to stop cursing so early.
Oh,
you know
it's
what?
all right.
That's all right. Who are we talking about? And what are we doing? Because we're in a block episode again.
Another block episode.
Baseball just started back up, so we're getting into baseball. Who we got?
We've got a brothers baseball block. So famous Major League Baseball players, two of them, who are brothers.
3 Bs.
3 Bs. Triple B, like Guy Fieri and Triple D.
That's right.
Only way better and less hair dye. Anyway, our first set of brothers, the first one we're going to talk about is Sandy Alomar Jr.
Yeah, we got the Alomars, and we're starting with Sandy Jr. Just a great catcher. And we see, and I knew as soon as we were doing this, we were going to get some frustrated Dom. We'll
get into it.
With them just the pods.
A ham sandwich!
Just trading away their prospects for a guy for like 6 months.
I will discuss this later in the episode. I will try and rationalize it like I've tried to rationalize a lot of these decisions over the last 30 years of my life. So Santos Alomar Velasquez Jr., born June 18th, 1966 in Salinas, Puerto Rico. He was the middle child to Maria. And Sandy Sr., who was a former Major League Baseball player.
Yes, and him and his brother really idolized his father. And But I saw they didn't really spend a lot of time, which makes sense during the season. So, I mean, you know, what baseball players do. But they spent a lot of summers with him.
Yeah, so his dad played 15 years in the big leagues.
Yep.
He was an all-star second baseman, mostly for those Angels teams in the 70s. His dad never pushed his kids into baseball. He just said, the only influence that they get is from seeing me play. And his dad basically talked about how his mom or his wife was the most important person to his 3 children. Like how she was always around because he was off playing baseball all the time. And Sandy wasn't as into baseball growing up as his younger brother.
No, it wasn't. Because you hear these kids coming up, especially in like Puerto Rico, where they play all day.
Every day,
and that was really not the case for Sandy. He kind of was just kind of a.
It said he was into dirt bike riding and karate.
Into a bunch of like kind of stuff.
He is like Brett Hull, only has his shit together. Essentially, he's just doing other stuff. And then his dad really talked about how he only got interested in baseball by catching. That was the only thing that interested him. That was the only position that interested him because of just the action.
The constant. It's not like pitching either. You think you might do that, but yeah, I feel like the catching, that really caught him. Hey, come on, we're 2 comedians. But that's it. It's interesting because if he had never become a catcher, he might have never went into baseball, and he could have been the greatest dirt bike / karate guy in the whole world.
He would have been participating in the extreme games in the mid-1990s,
That's
Chris.
Right. Breaking boards and doing backflips.
It would have been, he would have been the Puerto Rican Chuck Norris. Let's just throw that out. At 6'5", 200 pounds, he could have. He could have.
The Florida Ranger? Come on.
Ooh, yeah. But 6'5", 200 pounds, you're behind the dish, you got a cannon for. He would throw guys out kneeling. Like, that's how strong of an arm that he had. Just a very great defender and very smart. His baseball IQ, because of his dad and also him and his younger brother had just ridiculous baseball IQs. But
just growing up with it and growing up on the professional side of it. So like seeing their dad in the summers and like kind of that kind of stuff where it's a different perspective for you growing up just playing Little League, I imagine.
it's a game, but you see it also as a job.
Yeah.
Like you see the
Work
employment.
that needs to be, yeah.
Yeah, the work ethic and everything that it takes. He ends up graduating Luis Munoz Rivera High School in Puerto Rico, and he's signed by the San Diego Padres on October 21st, 1983, because in these days, if you didn't know, Puerto Ricans weren't subject to the MLB draft. They were treated as foreign prospects, which good for them at this time. And at this point, the Padres are actually really good at finding talent there.
And I was going to say, him and his brother actually reap the benefits of this because they get to just get injected right into their minor league system, and they're good enough at a super young age to be like, oh yeah, these guys should be.
And their dad's an assistant coach at the big club.
Oh
too,
yeah, he was an assistant coach at that time.
Padres.
Oh yeah.
So
you could all kind of see that too. The scouts being like, yeah, we're gonna pick up your sons. We see it.
Like we see how awesome your sperm is, sir. We get it. We get it. You're good at baseball. You're a good middle infielder, and you're good at plowing. So we got you. We got you.
There was a fee. They don't like to call it a stud fee, but it turned out.
Sandy kind of struggles his first years in the minors, and it's also kind of hard because his younger brother is also, he's doing very well and meeting him at specific levels, even though he's 2 years younger.
Yes.
His first couple seasons in Spokane and in Charleston are kind of difficult. In fact, he only hits .221 in his first 3 seasons.
Well, I was thinking about this because his brother had almost started earlier, where you almost see him like kind of catch up to his younger brother, which is a weird thing to say, but you see that at the skill level where he doesn't like take off right away, right when he gets into the minors. He struggles a little, and then he really puts it together where,
In 87, out in Wichita in the Texas League, Roberto's on his team now this year again. He hits .307 in 103 games, 8 home runs and 65 RBIs, and you're thinking, man, he just dominated Double-A. So in 88, he goes to AAA Las Vegas. The problem is, in 1987, the Padres have the Rookie of the Year on their team who plays catcher.
Another Puerto Rican
Benito Santiago, who, unlike Sandy, is a gigantic asshole, but like Sandy, extremely talented.
Yes.
He sets the record for a hitting streak by a catcher that year with, I believe, 33 games in a row, hits over 300, and he's in his early 20s. So, unfortunately for Sandy, even when he gets promoted to Las Vegas in 88 and has a fantastic season with hitting .297 with 16 homers and 71 RBIs, he's the co-minor league player of the year with a guy we did an episode on, Chris.
Oh, who was that for 88?
Gary Sheffield.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Gary Sheffield out in Denver.
I was going to say, because I saw he won this 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Which at that point, because he comes back to Vegas, 89.
Yeah, because he gets a cup of coffee in 88 with the Padres, but it's like a September call-up.
Yes, it's a barely, hey, what are you doing up here?
Hey,
kinda.
come up here to get your first major league hit, and we can have 3 people named Alomar on the field at the same time.
Yeah, I've been in the show. You've been in the show? I've been in the show for 20 days. Like, that's kind of how it was, you know?
Exactly.
So he's back down in Vegas in 89 and dominating. That's the thing that...
Which is sad because he should be on another team. Like, I mean, I would have liked for him to have played for the Padres, but he should have been on another team. And I won't say it's not, or I won't say it's shitty, but it's kind of not fair.
Yes.
Because they have nowhere to go. They haven't been able to trade him. I guess before this season, 22 of the other 25 MLB teams were inquiring whether they could trade for him. But in Las Vegas that year, again, he hits .306, 13 dinger, 101 RBIs. That's amazing. He threw out 34% of the runners on base, and like you said, minor league player of the year. And this time it's not Co. He wins it 2 years in a row. He had this quote where he said, "It means a lot to me. The way I felt, I was so frustrated. I figured there was no way I'd win it again." So, like, it's perseverance. It's just like, man, I'm in a crappy situation. No one's going to pay me. I'll get that September call-up again and just hope they'll trade me somewhere else.
And that's really what happens is they realize they can't sit on him for another year. And the Padres make a great trade to bring in one of these guys who plays for them for like a decade.
So I've tried to rationalize this, Chris, and this is all I can think of. Okay, so in the winter of '89, the Padres are coming off a season where they finished second in their division to the Giants in the NL West. They need one more bat in their lineup, and what they have is a talented minor league catcher who won't play for them, and they have a glut of middle infielders. Templeton's still playing short, but you have Robbie Alomar, Joey Cora played in '87. You have Bip Roberts on your roster. I mean, you want to get rid of it and see if you can get like a proven guy to maybe take you over the hump and get you in the NLCS. Oh, do they fuck this up royally?
It is, and it's
and not for who they get, but what ends up happening.
I was just going to say, sometimes this is just the bad luck in baseball where it on paper, when it happens, that looks like a great trade. What happens after that is just bad for any Padres fan. I can't even imagine it. And this is kind of what sucks too with baseball is when teams have just too many guys at one position, they end up trading and it doesn't go as, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily benefit the team.
It doesn't help them. So on December 6th, because the Cleveland Indians have just lost Jake Taylor.
Yep.
They are in need of a catcher.
They're in need of a catcher. He had just retired.
Randy Newman is singing songs on his piano.
Making a couple of Olympic swimmers, a couple of athletes out there.
Making the league minimum. No more. He is not making the league minimum.
I didn't know they still had baseball in Cleveland.
I don't know they still had it in San Diego either.
So he gets traded to Cleveland for one Joe Carter.
Joe Carter. So it's Sandy Alomar, Craig James's brother, who did nothing for them, Chris James, but Carlos Baerga, who made multiple All-Star teams for the Indians and was a huge part of some of the success we'll be talking about later. This was the biggest move because it started everything for what we'll talk about for the Indians and Sandy down the road throughout the 90s.
Two just great defensive players. And I think that's...
Baerga was a 300 hitter for like a half a decade. He was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, he was an all-star second baseman, but you're not overtaking the other Alomar.
No.
Until they trade him away, goddamn. But we bring this up because Joe Carter lasts one season in San Diego.
1990.
And you gave away all of that.
You traded Jay Buhner. He's got a rocket for an arm.
You traded Jay Buhner for Ken Phelps.
Everybody said Ken Phelps. But that's really what it felt like with this trade, where Carter's not bad, but you really trade away your future.
Well, and the Indians were just trying to shed payroll. Carter didn't want to come back to Cleveland, and they were like, well, you're going to make too much money. We got to get rid of you to somewhere else.
Yep.
And this was basically a godsend for Sandy because in 1990, it's his season for Cleveland. They're a bad team, which means A, he gets to play right away, and B, gets to show everybody how good he is. He's the immediate starter at catcher. His first season, he makes the All-Star team. The first starting rookie catcher in an All-Star game in 1990. And at this game, his brother's playing second base for the National League, and his dad is one of the coaches for the National League, which is pretty cool.
Alomar All-Star game.
That season, he hits .290 with 9 dingers, 26 doubles, 66 RBIs, and he wins the Gold Glove
as a catcher,
and was the unanimous Rookie of the Year for the American League.
Yep.
And was the first time an Indians catcher had won a Gold Glove since 1976 with Rick Manning. So I did want to bring up this year, he plays in 132 games. Why is that number important? Because it's the most games he'll ever play in any season because of injuries.
I was just going to say, so you see him, especially in this next couple of years, really struggle with injury. And then when you see him really start to click it in, so at least have like half seasons in like 96, that's when like the Indians are this powerhouse.
Yeah, because like 91, 92, he makes the All-Star team both years because of his defense and his leadership and everything. He plays in 140 games combined.
Yes.
93, he only plays in 64 games, hits .270. The problem is all of these injuries aren't like, ooh, my fingernail's going to fall off. You know, he's having back surgery, right rotator cuff surgery, right hip flexor, 2 right knee injuries from slides, and he twice injured the webbing in his right hand. How the hell do you even... I mean, if you're picking a position to get the hell beat out of you, that's the one.
And I do feel like it's like some of these injuries you would see on a guy, you'd be like, ooh, that's a rough career. He went through all of these injuries in like a span of like 3 or 4 years.
And he was such a G, though. He kept going out there. That was the thing. And even as he's being injured, the Indians keep acquiring more talent. And they start in 94, they finished second in their division. Interesting fact. On opening day of 94, they play the Seattle Mariners. And he breaks up a no-hitter by Randy Johnson in the 7th inning with Bob Feller. We should do a Bob Feller episode one of these days. Finally have a winning record, the Indians. He plays in 80 games that year, 14 dingers, hits 288. So, like, when he's in the lineup, he's playing very well.
Yes, but he definitely can't keep... essentially like a 60 to 70 game season is what he averages in this time. 95.
He has a knee injury in 94, which prevents him from coming back until basically June of that season. He hits 300 in a stack. And this is an awesome Indians team. They have not made the playoffs since Lou Brown was there. No, they have not made the playoffs in 41 years.
I don't know, man. I got another guy on the line talking about white walls. But you're right, 40 years, 41 years. It's definitely a franchise that hope isn't there, if you will. But then in these years, in the early 90s, everybody can see, like, they're getting to be a great team. 94.
Kenny Lofton is on this team. We did an episode on. You're starting to see, because that's what
Kenny Loft.
That Baerga Alomar trade. You finally get Albert Bell coming up. You get Manny Ramirez drafted. You trade for Kenny Lofton. It's starting to come together, Pepper.
Yep.
So in 95, they have Tony Pena kind of spotting him late in his career.
Well, they said they picked up Pena because he was injured so much that they had to have somebody else. And if you look at it, it was probably a great spot for Pena to come in and get some.
Well, he was a former All-Star in St. Louis, Pittsburgh. I mean, he's definitely, I won't say past his prime, but, he's
I was going to say, yeah. It was definitely a good trade for them.
So in 95, he hits 300. He batted 9th in the lineup and still had 10 homers and 35. That's how good this lineup was.
Yeah.
Jim Thome, Manny Ramirez. I mean, Jesus. They go to the postseason for the first time, and they go 144. Imagine, though, coming in like a Baerga or a Sandy Alomar in 1990 to that horrible state, because they moved into Jacobs Field in 94, but playing in that old Brown Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Where they had 10-cent beer night, everyone. That's what everyone's talking about.
It's one of the greatest nights in baseball.
Get ladies flashing their jugs at the umpire. That's a good night of baseball. They beat Boston. They sweep them in the ALDS. They beat Seattle 6 games in the ALC. And they go to their first World Series.
Yeah.
41 years.
41 years.
Unfortunately, Sandy and the rest of the offense don't do particularly well. We talked about it in the Kenny Lofton episode with that
they really
favorable strike zone.
I was just going to say they really hit a wall here, but it really, man.
It's 200.
It's a favorable strike zone. You're not wrong.
Very favorable. 96, they win the AL Central again. Sandy's an all-star this season.
But then misses second half of the season.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing that we see here is like I think he plays something like 70 games and then...
Oh, no, he played in 127 this season.
Oh, okay, in 96. Yeah. All right, yeah.
He hits 263 with 11 dingers, 50 RBIs. Indians are great this year. They win. This is a span from, I believe, 95 to 99. They win the AL Central every single season. So they're in the playoffs every single season. Unfortunately, in the ALDS, they play Baltimore. And who plays for Baltimore, Chris?
His brother.
And
with old Cali Rip June. I'll tell you what, that was a game. That was a team of juniors, and it was a defensive powerhouse. Was that Orioles team?
Oh yeah, up the middle. I mean, Jesus Christ. But and his brother performed. We'll discuss it in the next episode. Quite well in this particular series. Sandy does not, along with the rest of Cleveland's offense. It's only 125.
Yeah.
And they're eliminated. And 97 the following year. This is probably the greatest thing to have happened to him as far as being a professional baseball player. This is his best season.
I was just going to say, this is definitely his best season. He's finally, and this is what I mixed up, because 96, he finally has like a full season, isn't injured, and then comes back in 97, and you're like, oh, this is the potential that he showed in San Diego and his first 2 years in Cleveland.
Oh, yeah. So in 97, he plays in 125 games, has 480 at-bats, and then career highs in hits, doubles, dingers, RBIs. Hit 324 this season.
Yep.
He was hitting like over 400 into May. That's how good he was this season. With
All-Star game and
354 on-base percentage,
Yep.
a 900 OPS. And let's talk about that All-Star game, Chris.
in Cleveland.
July 8th, 1997.
And he hits a dinger.
He hits a dinger.
And-
He hits a very important dinger in this game.
I thought it was interesting. His son was there, I think. It was like 7, and he said something like, "Oh yeah," I yelled at him, or they were yelling at him, "Get a hit," and I said, "Get a home run." It was such a kid thing, but yeah.
So yeah, in this game, I believe it's the bottom of the 7th. Bernie Williams is on second base. Sean Estes is on the mound. Paul O'Neill, who a sick boy in Seinfeld told to catch a ball in his hat so Kramer could get that poster back, says to Mike
3 home runs.
3 home runs. You got to count it. That's an inside the park home.
Ooh, I don't know.
He basically told Mike Hargrove, who was the Indians manager but was coaching in the All-Star game, if all things were fair, Sandy would hit a home run and win this ball game. And on a 2-2 pitch, he does it, and they win 3-1.
They crush it, yeah.
It was the first Cleveland home run in an All-Star game since 1959 in Rocky Colavito, which that's in the forever ago. He played with Larry Doby back in the day.
It's in the long, long ago.
It's in the long, long ago. It was the first All-Star game MVP also for the Indians.
Yep.
And we go to the playoffs, and the dingers never stop, Chris. The dingers never stop.
So we go to the playoffs this year. They go up against the Yankees. This is when the Yankees start putting their shit together.
Yeah, this is when the evil empire
Starts to
the Death Star's being built.
yes, exactly. I think Game 4.
It is Game 4 because
He
they're
hits
down 2-1 in the
Yep.
series. This is when the Yankees still had pedophile John Wetland as their closer, but future Hall of Famer Mariano Rivera was their setup man.
And he hits one to...
They're down 2-1 in the bottom of the 8th.
Yeah, I was going to say, to essentially take the Indians further in this playoffs because, like you were saying, down 2-1, losing the game. Like, everything was going against them, and he hit it off a...
He hit it off the greatest closer of all time.
I was going to say one of
honest.
the best, but yeah, really the greatest closer of all time. The most consistent, and...
He hits this opposite field shot off him on a 2-0 pitch. He just takes it opposite field in the right field and ties the game at 2. And then in the bottom of the 9th, he wins the game again on a single. To force a Game 5, which they end up winning 4-3, and he had a double and a run in the Game 5 as well. So he's the hero of the division series. They go to the championship series, and who do they draw, Chris?
They get their familiar foes.
Their familiar foes.
In the Orioles, which it's such a great matchup that you see kind of building throughout the years of fucking brothers.
Yeah,
man.
right.
They end up beating the Orioles.
Yep, he hits a homer in Game 4.
Yep.
They win them in 6 games, and then they go to the World Series and play the Florida Marlins in a very exciting World Series for Florida. And I mean, everyone not in Cleveland, it was exciting.
I was just going to say, Sandy has a really great World Series, but Florida is so stacked.
And lucky.
And lucky.
Shit.
Yeah. I think in the World Series, he hits 367 with 2 home runs.
He does.
I'm just saying. So, like, he has an amazing World Series. They didn't have the luck on their side.
If Jose Mesa just keeps his shit together, it doesn't even. And if Bobby Bonilla doesn't hit that home run, do you think he had earplugs in, Chris?
Such a crazy. It's just to think of just little things that would change. I mean, Cleveland winning that World Series over the Marlins. It just.
Oh my God, that had to be heartbreaking because you see that Renteria single over Nagy. You're like, Is he? No, God. And for him to have to watch that from behind the plate.
Yeah,
dude,
from behind the plate to see it.
Just depressing.
Oh, man.
98, he makes his final All-Star game. He made 6 All-Star games, which for a guy who never played more than 132 games in a season is pretty damn incredible.
No, it really is. And he was that great of a catcher where you saw his potential, especially in 97, but kind of played with a lot of hardcore injuries.
Well, and while he could hit, his main, what he brought most to the table was his defensive play, his ability to call a game and handling a pitching staff, and just his overall leadership.
That's what
everyone swears. And I couldn't find a single player on those Indians teams who disliked him.
Yep.
They all had nothing but nice and positive things to say.
And they said it was the leadership that you want by leading by example.
Yes. Yeah. Not rah-rah, but more like, here's how you be a professional.
Yes.
So 98, they win the division again. Unfortunately, they lose in the championship series to the Yankees in Death Star fashion in 6 games. 99, though, was probably their best chance, I would say. They win the AL Central. Sandy's brother comes and plays for the Indians.
Yes.
And this lineup might have been better than the one in 1995, actually.
Well, they say defensively, this is probably the best.
Well, you had Alomar and Vizquel. That's
Alomar and Vizquel.
20-something odd gold gloves between them. I mean,
you know what they called them? The Eiffel Tower, because they were tag teaming.
Oh, they were tag teaming with a little extra, which we'll get into in the next episode.
It was
Chris.
a bit of the old what's good for
The double team. Sandy's only limited to 37 games, but still hits 307. He was their final hitter, and he's still hitting up over 300. In the ALDS, they're up 2-0. We talked about it in the Lofted episode, and they just completely implode. They completely implode and lose the last 3 games to lose the series. And then in 2000, his final season in Cleveland, he's 34. He starts splitting time with Einar Diaz at catcher. Plays in 97 games, has a nice season. I mean, 289, 7 dingers, 42 RBIs, but they don't make the playoffs. And by that point, Cleveland,
ready to rebuild.
Ready to go in a different direction.
Yeah, so he ends up going to the White Sox.
And this starts the point in his career where he's going to teams to basically be Jake Taylor.
Yes, seriously, to coach the up-and-coming
catchers and also handle the pitchers.
The both of that, where he's just like this veteran catcher that's like a leader or almost like a first base coach behind the plate.
Yeah, he's your catching coach already.
Yeah,
and also your pitching coach too. And much like Kenny Lofton, we discussed, he's such a nice guy.
Yeah,
that he probably extended his professional baseball career by an extra 6 years.
Especially when you see he really bounces around here a bit,
But I think teams are realizing, look, he's not going to play in a hell of a lot of games for us, but you know what he's going to do? Make our catchers and pitchers better on our roster. Because, he starts bouncing around starting in 2001. It goes to the White Sox, then the Rockies, then the Rangers. A couple of years there with the White Sox in 03 and 04. He plays with his brother again.
Yep. But they were both at the tail ends of their career, and they were both just kind of sporadically playing. But I do love the fact that they meet up and play with each other twice.
3 times if you count the Padres.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. They did kind of play.
Technically,
yeah, you're not wrong. And that was probably where they played the most together. Maybe in Cleveland.
Cleveland, probably.
Yeah, probably in Cleveland.
Then he plays for the Dodgers and then the Mets. Finally retires after 2007. And then in 2008, 2009, he's the catching instructor for the Mets. And then after that, because, like I said, that was the first move that made Cleveland a non-laughing stock of a baseball team.
Yep.
He's beloved by that. I mean, he's in their franchise's Hall of Fame. He goes back to Cleveland in 2010 and just starts coaching.
I was going to say, you see the transition to coaching being so seamless with him.
It's like his dad.
Yes.
Essentially, because his dad, much like him, and we'll get into how, I won't say, let's just say his brother had a much more illustrious MLB career, as he didn't spend as much time on the disabled list. Sandy could have enjoyed that as a catcher, unfortunately, for injuries. But no, he was a perfect fit to be a coach. Mm-hmm. He's been through, I think, 3 different managers with the Indians. Every new regime just keeps him on because of what he means. Terry Francona, former U of A Wildcat, who's now the Indians/Guardians coach, said, because he was in Cleveland when they first acquired him, he said he was the best catcher he had ever seen, and that included Hall of Famer Gary Carter. So that's pre-injuries.
Pretty wild praise.
He said Gary could drive in 100 runs a year, but Sandy was the better overall baseball player.
Yeah.
So, and he has kept him on. He's still coaching there now. He's been there over a decade. So, did want to bring this up. 20 years in Major League Baseball for him as a player. Mm-hmm. As a player, 1,236 hits, 112 dingers, 588 RBIs. He hit 273, which for a catcher is pretty damn good.
Over 20 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where, like, his batting average dips at the end of his career.
If he had those healthy seasons from 91 to about 99, we might be talking about, I won't say Hall of Fame Sandy Alomar, but it would be definitely a different discussion than what if. Still a 6-time All-Star, a Gold Glove, a Rookie of the Year, and an All-Star Game MVP.
Yeah.
Which, nothing to sneeze at, and I'm surprised he hasn't got a head coaching job in Major League Baseball now.
It makes you think maybe he doesn't want it. Some guys see what the head coaching is, and they're just like, no, I don't want that whatsoever. Because I think he's literally...
Or he's just happy in Cleveland.
Yeah, he's catching coach, he's first base coach. He's just kind of like, no, I'm fine.
I've been here for the last 35 years.
Yeah.
I like Cleveland. But yeah, Sandy Alomar. If you don't know about him, check him out. It's a really interesting story.
Definitely.